Good morning and welcome to our live coverage of Starlink Group 8-11 mission from Space Coast, that is from the Pad Space Launch Complex 40 at Cape Canaveral Space Force Station in Florida. We hope you all are doing fine and excited about the upcoming Starlink launch. Hello, my name is Dipta Maitra, performing the commentary for today's mission launch. Before moving on to mission details, firstly, on behalf of AstroYonder team, we express our heartfelt gratitude to everyone for being a part of today's launch. We really appreciate you being here. A big thanks to our amazing YouTube community for being here as we provide detailed coverage of space launches, complete with extensive stats and thorough insights. We are super excited bringing you the live coverage of SpaceX 88th overall launch and the 85th Falcon 9 launch of this year. We are waiting for a Falcon 9 liftoff at 9:01 a.m. Eastern Time from Cape Canaveral for a northeasterly launch for SpaceX Starlink mission. The Starlink mission 8-11 will launch 21 Starlink satellites, including 13 with direct-to-cell capability satellites to low Earth orbit. Today's Starlink mission marks SpaceX's amazing 380th overall launch with the 368th Falcon 9 launch to date. This is the 61st dedicated Starlink mission of the year for SpaceX. And prior to today's launch, SpaceX has launched 1,330 Starlink satellites so far, over 40 flights this year, and overall 6,980 Starlink satellites to date. SpaceX is currently targeting a liftoff time of Falcon 9 from Cape Canaveral Space Force Station at 12:07 p.m. Eastern Time, 4:07 p.m. UTC, which corresponds to 9:07 a.m. Pacific Time on Wednesday, September 4th. Now let's take a look at today's payload details for Starlink Group 8-11 mission. This launch marks the 61st dedicated Starlink launch for this year. Starlink satellites are built at SpaceX Satellite Development Facility in Redmond, Washington. Today's launch consists of 21 version 2 mini satellites, which include 13 dedicated satellites with direct-to-cell capabilities. Each Starlink satellite is equipped with powerful 5 advanced Ku-band phased array antennas and 3 dual-band utilizing Ka and E-band parabolic antennas to provide increased capacity. These antennas altogether utilizes Ku, Ka and E-band frequencies, allowing Starlink to provide high bandwidth connectivity, that is 4 times more capacity per satellite than earlier versions. Each satellite features a dual solar array with a size of 52.5 square meter, which unfurls to a wingspan of 100 feet. The solar arrays are also aeroneutral, which enable faster on-orbit maneuvers. Also, the satellite has a high capacity battery to provide power to the payloads. Each Starlink satellite contains 3 space laser transponders, that is optical inter-satellite links for intercommunications. operating at up to 200 Gbps, which together across the constellation form a global internet mesh that can connect customers anywhere in the world. These optical inter-satellite links also enables the spacecraft to transmit data without local ground stations, providing truly global coverage. Each Starlink version 2 mini satellite weighs nearly 800 kilograms, that is 1763 pounds. Starlink satellites are equipped with efficient ion Hall effect thrusters powered by argon, which enable Starlink satellites to orbit raise, maneuver in space, and deorbit at the end of their useful life. Today's payload will be placed in an orbit with an altitude of 303 kilometers and with an inclination of 53.16 degrees. Starlink uses custom-built navigation sensors named Star Tracker that survey the stars to determine each satellite's location, altitude, and orientation for best possible broadband throughput. Each Starlink satellite contains 4 reaction wheels, providing agile attitude control for the vehicle. The hot spare configuration ensures high reliability operation, and its aluminum flywheel is fully demisable at the end of life. It is also worth mentioning the Starlink satellites are equipped with an onboard autonomous collision avoidance system for avoiding collisions with other spacecraft and space junk autonomously, which utilizes the US Department of Defense debris tracking database. Direct-to-cell is a technology developed by Starlink team. In easy word, it's like having cell phone towers in space. This technology allows our cell phones to connect directly to satellites. Imagining a scenario when we are in a remote area where there is no cell tower nearby. Normally, we would not get any signal on our phone. But with direct-to-cell satellite technology, our phones can get a signal directly from a Starlink satellite overhead. It is designed to work with common LTE standards with absolute no changes to hardware, firmware, or special apps required. Whether you are on land, lakes, coastal waters, or even in the air, as long as you can see the sky, you can get a signal. It provides connectivity in remote regions, giving you peace of mind when you need it the most. Recently, Starlink made its first video call on X using unmodified mobile phones connected to Starlink direct-to-cell satellites. Earlier, we witnessed textual communication via these satellites. Now, Starlink plans to launch the service with T-Mobile later this year. Now let's take a look at the flight record for the booster supporting today's Starlink 8-11 mission. A mature booster with tail number 1077 will be supporting today's mission, marking its 15th flight, having an age of 1 year and 11 months. To be precise, I guess it's 700 days. Today's supporting booster with tail number 1077 has 14 previous flights in its record, including missions like SpaceX Crew 5, which marked the 5th operational NASA commercial crew program flight of a Crew Dragon spacecraft, and also it marked the 8th overall crewed orbital flight. GPS 3 Space Vehicle 6 mission was also supported by this booster. Next, the Inmarsat I6F2 for Inmarsat, a British satellite telecommunication company which offers telephone and data services worldwide. CRS-28, that is Commercial Resupply Service Mission to the International Space Station, which marked the 8th flight for SpaceX under NASA's CRS Phase 2 contract. Next supported mission was the Intelsat G37 for Intelsat SA, a multinational satellite services provider headquartered in Luxembourg. Another non-Starlink mission supported by today's booster was the Cygnus NG-20, a commercial resupply services mission to the ISS operated by Northrop Grumman. And this was the 20th flight of the Cygnus, an expendable American cargo spacecraft, and was deorbited on 30th July 2024. Additionally, the booster also supported 8 Starlink missions, now awaiting its 15th flight just minutes away. It has been 38 days since the last mission supported by this booster. The last mission supported by today's booster was the Starlink Group 10-4 mission from here at Cape on July 28th of this year. Today's mission will be the 15th consecutive launch of this booster from East Coast, with all launches from Pad 39A and Space Launch Complex 40. And this will be the 11th flight of this booster from Space Launch Complex 40, with its 10th landing on Just Read the Instructions droneship. Now we have a request for you guys. Hitting the like button helps YouTube's algorithm catch the drift and bring more space lovers and rocket buffs our way, helping us to build a community with amazing space enthusiasts like you. And also consider subscribing to us. We would be totally amazed to have you on board, as your support means the world to us, which inspires us to work more hard to provide live coverage filled with stats and thorough insights. Now let's have a look at the bar graphs presenting number of Falcon 9 launches each year. Before today's launch, SpaceX completed 84 successful missions using the Falcon 9 so far this year as part of its milestone, with the recent launch of Starlink 9-5 mission back on August 31st. The launch marked the 15th launch since the Starlink 9-3 mission failure, and now with the Starlink 9-5 launch, they have 23 more than the launches made in 2022. Now with today's launch of Starlink Group 8-11 mission, the bar graph shows 85 Falcon 9 launches so far this year, which is 24 more than the launches made in 2022. They have already done more than half as many launches as they did all of last year, and it's been only 8 months and 4 days of this year. Just 11 more launches and SpaceX will be reaching the same number of launches made in last year, as SpaceX stays on course to achieve its ambitious target of 140 to 148 launches by this year's end. Now let's go ahead as we progress to the countdown and review the milestones that lie ahead for us on this Cape Canaveral flight. At T minus 38 minutes, countdown begins at this point when SpaceX launch director gives the go for the start of propellant load. If everything looks fine, prop load begins at T minus 30 minutes mark with the loading of rocket grade kerosene, that is RP1, on board the first and second stages of the Falcon 9 rocket. At the same time, LOX load, that is super chilled liquid oxygen, is loaded on board the first stage, and then at T minus 16 minutes, which will be the next event that we are looking for here, that's when the second stage liquid oxygen load begins. At T minus 7 minutes, that's when the chill down of 9 Merlin engines gets underway, which involves flowing a small amount of liquid oxygen through the plumbing and turbo pumps, which helps protect the engines from the risk of thermal shock and damages during the startup sequence. At about 6 minutes before liftoff, the first stage kerosene tank should be full. In a T minus 4 minutes and a half, the strong back retract sequence begins. The process begins with the clamp arms underneath the payload fairings opening up, followed by the transporter erector or strong back reclining about 1.5 degrees away from the Falcon 9. It remains in that position until liftoff, at which point it rapidly pulls back to clear the way for Falcon 9's vertical ascent. Now, just for a quick knowledge, you might be knowing that the strong back reclining process at Cape Canaveral and Kennedy Space Center differs from that at Vandenberg. Here at Cape Canaveral and Kennedy Space Center, we recline the strong back about 1.5 degrees, whereas at Vandenberg, we recline it 13 degrees away from the Falcon 9. The strong back positioned alongside the vehicle, also referred as a transporter erector, fulfills multiple functions. It supplies propellants, provides air conditioning, pressurization gases, and electrical power. Additionally, it transports the Falcon 9 to the launch pad and positions it for the launch. On your screen, you can see how a strong back or the transporter erector transport rockets. Although this image is of a Falcon Heavy being transported, but the process is similar for the Falcon 9. At T minus 3 minutes mark, the first stage liquid oxygen loading should be complete, followed by the second stage liquid oxygen loading wrapping up at T minus 2 minutes mark. At that point, the Falcon 9 rocket is fully fueled with 1 million pounds of propellant. At T minus 1 minute mark, the propellant tanks are brought up to flight pressure. In the final 60 seconds of the countdown, the control of the flight system, that is launch sequence, is handed over from the ground sequencer to the Falcon 9's onboard flight computer. If everything looks good, at T minus 45 seconds mark, the SpaceX launch director will give the final go for the Falcon 9 liftoff. Now at T minus 3 seconds, the engine ignition sequence start command being issued by onboard engine controller. Finally, at T0, we will have liftoff If all 9 Merlin 1D engines ignite and are healthy, flight computer will give the command for the hold down clamps to release the Falcon 9. SpaceX is currently targeting a liftoff time of Falcon 9 from Cape Canaveral Space Force Station at 12:07 p.m. Eastern Time, 4:07 p.m. UTC, which corresponds to 9:07 a.m. Pacific Time on Wednesday, September 4th. Let's go ahead and briefly step through the trajectory for today's Starlink mission. Falcon 9 leaving the pad from Space Launch Complex 40 from Cape Canaveral with a batch of 21 Starlink satellites, including 13 direct-to-cell satellites on board, for a northeast trajectory heading into low Earth orbit, that is to the 8th shell of second generation Starlink mega constellation, indicated by that green line on your screen. The red line you see indicates where Falcon 9 first stage will land after stage separation, just a little later, leaving Florida's Space Coast. This is going to be a droneship landing using autonomous spaceport droneship. For today, it's just read the instruction droneship, one of the two here on the East Coast, which means that the first stage booster with tail number 1077 flying for its 15th time will be returning, heading out to the droneship for its landing. This will be the 90th landing on just read the instructions droneship to date. The planned booster recovery is approximately 618 kilometers with estimated fairing recovery approximately 700 kilometers downrange, and the stage 2 debris re-entry will be in the south of Australia. Currently there are 3 in SpaceX droneship fleet. Of the 3 droneships, just read the instructions and A Shortfall of Gravitas are stationed here in Florida, while of course I Still Love You is stationed in California. Expecting the addition of a 4th droneship likely by the end of this year or early next year. Also recently, the Blue Origin's landing vessel arrived at Florida, and its name is Jacqueline, after Jeff Bezos' mom. Now recently, with the Falcon 9's return to the flight on Starlink 10-9 mission launch, a new member joined the SpaceX recovery fleet on its inaugural mission, completing fairing recovery sea trials. And that is the Go Cosmos recovery vessel that is situated here at the East Coast only. Now SpaceX will utilize the recovery vessel Bob to retrieve the fairing halves from the Atlantic waters today. The 2 halves of the payload fairings will be recovered slightly farther downrange, approximately 82 kilometers downrange from where the first stage lands on the drone ship, after they will smoothly splash down with the guidance of the parachutes. SpaceX manufactures the fairing in-house with a total cost of 2 halves is nearly $6 million. It is of no surprise that SpaceX aims to recover the fairings for repetitive use, mirroring its approach with rocket boosters, upholding the motto of reusability and sustainability. You can see on your screen how a fairing recovery looks like. Although the recovery vessel on your screen is dug, but today's supporting recovery vessel is Bob. Other recovery vessel Doug and Go Cosmos here at East Coast is currently awaiting its next assignment. Now here is a short video of the fairing separation and MVAC ignition. You can see how the fairing halves separate, exposing the payload on board the second stage to space and the MVAC engine ignition. Another short clip of a fairing half, as you know, that protective shell from a rocket's payload making its way back home, piercing through the Earth's atmosphere, creating a mesmerizing halo around it due to the atmospheric friction. We hope that you enjoyed both those two breathtaking short clips. Now, if you feel like we are adding value to your viewing experience, please consider giving this video a like. It really helps YouTube's algorithm bring in more space lovers and rocket buffs to discover this stream, helping us to build a community with amazing space enthusiasts like you. Also consider about smashing that subscribe button and turning on the bell notification as we work hard to bring you detailed streams with stats and insights. Now let's have a look through the launch timeline for the Falcon 9 rocket passing these events following liftoff. At T plus 1 minute and 10 seconds, Falcon 9 will pass through max Q, a point of greatest aerodynamic pressure on the vehicle. Then a couple of different events coming up in rapid succession. First will be at T plus 2 minutes and 25 seconds, where first stage main engine cutoff will occur, also known as MECO, followed by a major milestone within 4 seconds at T plus 2 minutes and 29 seconds, where first and second stage will separate from each other. Just after 7 seconds later, second stage MVAC engine will ignite for the first time during today's flight, that is SES-1 at T plus 2 minutes and 36 seconds. Coming up next at T plus 2 minutes and 59 seconds mark, Falcon 9's payload fairings will be jettisoned, exposing the payload to the vacuum of space. At T plus 6 minutes and 11 seconds, the first stage entry burn will begin, lasting for 23 seconds, up to 6 minutes and 34 seconds mark, ending the entry burn for the Falcon 9's first stage. At this time around, we will hear the callouts for stage 1 FTS, that is the flight termination systems, being saved. Again, just for a quick knowledge, the stage 1 FTS is saved, or one can say flight termination systems are turned off or disabled after the re-entry burn, whereas the stage 2 FTS is saved after the orbital insertion burn. We will also hear the callouts for stage 1 being transonic and stage 2 being in terminal guidance. Next major milestone at t plus 7 minutes and 59 seconds. The first stage landing burn will commence, which will orient and set up the first stage for SpaceX iconic precision landing. At t plus 8 minutes and 22 seconds, the first stage will land on droneship. Just read the instructions for 90th time, marking SpaceX 344th overall booster landing to date. The second stage MBAC engine will shut down, that is SECO 1, for the first time in today's flight and will enter into a parking orbit at t plus 8 minutes and 38 seconds. T plus 54 minutes and 48 seconds. The second stage MVAC engine will reignite for a quick 2-second burn, a event known as SES2, and turning it off at T plus 54 minutes and 50 seconds, that is SECO 2, which will set up the batch of 21 Starlink satellites deployment at approximately T plus 1 hour, 3 minutes and 42 seconds. Coming to some stats related to today's mission launch. Today's launch marks 380th SpaceX overall launch and the 61st dedicated Starlink launch for this year. This mission marks the 368th Falcon 9 launch to date and the 15th flight for this particular Falcon 9 booster supporting today's mission with tail number 1077. Today's launch marks 85th Falcon 9 launch of 2024 so far and is SpaceX 88th overall launch of this year, including the third and fourth integrated flight test of Starship and also one Falcon Heavy launch. We are expecting the next fifth integrated flight test of Starship probably mid-September. This is SpaceX 314th Falcon booster reflight to date, meaning the launch of a booster that has flown at least once before. This will be the 204th orbital launch for SpaceX, launching from Space Launch Complex 40, and the 259th overall orbital launch from this pad. With the success of this mission, SpaceX will have a remarkable 7,001 Starlink satellites, including 194 dedicated direct-to-cell satellites launched to date. Now moving on to some reusability statistics. This launch marks 300 Falcon 9 booster reflight to date. This will be the 90th landing on just read the instruction droneship to date. 15th landing of the first stage booster with tail number 1077 with this mission's first stage landing, which brings the milestone of the 270th overall droneship landing, marking the 325th Falcon 9 landing and the 344th SpaceX overall landing to date. Speaking of droneship landings, let's look into the stats for droneship landings prior to today's mission. It is worth mentioning among the droneships, A Shortfall of Gravitas has 1 unsuccessful landing attempts and 80 successful landings out of 81 overall attempts. Previously, with the Starlink 8-6 mission, witnessing the landing failure for the booster with tail number 1062 on its record-breaking 23rd flight. In comparison, Just Read the Instructions has encountered 3 unsuccessful landings with 89 successful landings out of 92 overall attempts with previous Starlink 8-10 mission. While of course I Still Love You has experienced 7 unsuccessful landings and 100 successful landings out of 107 overall attempts with the recent Starlink 9-5 mission from Vandenberg. Please note that only these droneship landing stats which I mentioned here right now are excluding today's mission. These are prior to today's launch, so please don't get confused. Some key stats for SpaceX launches in this year, including today's Starlink 8-11 mission. With today's mission launch, SpaceX has a total of 88 launches this year, and out of those, 61 are Starlink missions, including one from today. 25 non-Starlink missions for commercial and government organizations, and 2 Starship launches. The recent non-Starlink mission supported by Falcon 9 was the Transporter 11 and Maitra 2 missions. One of the previous non-Starlink missions, the GOES-U mission, was supported by the 10th Falcon Heavy launch. SpaceX reused booster for 82 times in those mission launches, including today's mission, showing their commitment to sustainability and reusability. Looking to the geographical distribution of these launches, they have 58 launches from East Coast in Florida, with 16 from Launch Complex 39A at Kennedy Space Center, and 42 launches, including today's one, from Space Launch Complex 40 here at Cape Canaveral Space Force Station. On the West Coast, they have 28 launches, all from Space Launch Complex 4 East at Vandenberg Space Force Base in California. Also, there were 2 launches from Gulf Coast at Starbase back in Texas for the Starship 3rd and 4th integrated flight test. As for landings, they will be nailing it today 85 times this year. Most of the landings are on drone ships with 67 successful landings, 23 on Of Course I Still Love You, 19 on Just Read the Instructions, including one from today, and 25 on A Shortfall of Gravitas. The stats for A Shortfall of Gravitas would have been 1 more, but unfortunately due to the loss of the booster of tail number 1062 during Starlink 8-6 mission, now the drone ship A Shortfall of Gravitas is currently having 25 successful landing attempts. And for ground landings, they have pulled off 18 of them, 11 times on landing zone 1 previously with Maxar 2 mission, 2 times on landing zone 2, and 5 times on landing zone 4 with the recent Transporter 11 mission. Prior to today's launch, the success rate for ground landings is 98.67%. For droneship landing, it is 96.07%, and the overall landing success rate is 96.62%. The landing success rate for this year got reduced from 100% to 98.8%, again due to the failure of the booster with tail number 1062 to land successfully on A Shortfall of Gravitas. Longest stretch of successful mission in a row prior to the last mission failure, that is the Starlink 9-3 mission, is 334 back-to-back successful missions, that is from Iridium 1 to Turksat 6A. Today's mission is the 16th launch since last mission failure, that is the Starlink 9-3 mission. Most launches in a calendar quarter to date is 36 launches in the second quarter of this year, and most launches in a calendar month is 13 launches in May, again in this year only, that is in 2024. Moving on to this year's orbital launches, including today's one, here we have this pie chart. United States is dominating with 101 orbital launches, including today's mission. Launch comprising a substantial 63.9% of the global total. And recently on August 11th, we had a successful Rocket Labs Electron launch for Capella Space, deploying the Acadia 3 satellite, which also adds to the number of US orbital launches made this year. China follows closely behind, accounting for 24.7% with 39 launches, with the recent launch of Long March 4B. As we know, China plans setting a new record with 100 space launches this year, including lunar and station missions. Now Russia maintains a steady pace with 9 launches, making 5.7% of the pie. On the other hand, Japan has 4 launches so far, making 2.5% of the pie. Meanwhile, India and Iran entered the fray, with India having 3 launches with recent launch of ISRO's SSLV Flight 3 mission on August 16th, marking India's 3rd mission of 2024, taking 1.9% share of the pie. Also, it is worth mentioning this year's first successful orbital launch was made by India. And lastly, we have Iran having 2 launches, making 1.3% of the pie. Just for a quick update, SpaceX is now targeting a liftoff time of 12:08 p.m. Eastern Time. Just 1 minute of difference from the previous adjusted liftoff time. Now this pie chart we are having here showing 2024 orbital launches by rocket variations including today's launch. Now let's have a look and let me break it down for you. The green slice of the pie represents the Falcon 9 rocket, the true powerhouse and standout of the year with 85 launches including one from today, holding the largest share at 52.8% and leading, which accounts for more than half of the total. Next up we have Rocket Lab's Electron, which has completed 10 launches this year, representing 6.2% of the pie. Also we have Roscosmos Soyuz 2 rockets with 8 launches so far this year, which is 5% of the pie. Then we got China's Long March 2C and Long March 2D rockets, also known as CZ2C and CZ2D rockets. So the Long March 2C has 4 launches making 2.5% of the pie, and the Long March 2D has 5 launches with 3.1% of the pie. Lastly, we got this pink slice, another bigger slice of the pie labeled Others, which is a mix of different rockets, including Ariane 6, Falcon Heavy, Atlas 5, Delta 4 Heavy, Vulcan Centaur, ISRO's GSLV Mark II and PSLV DL, Japan's H3 and H2A, Iran's Simorgh and Kayam 100, Russia's Angara A5, China's Gravity 1, Long March 7A and others. The names are not exhaustive. They got 49 launches in total, which is 30.4% of the pie. Also, please note that this slice of the pie labeled others doesn't count the suborbital launches. Now today's mission launch marks the 160th orbital launch globally. Guess it's time for the webcast to begin. Oh, unfortunately just now we got an update that SpaceX is not launching for today. Well, they didn't mention for the liftoff time for tomorrow's launch, but it is sure that they will be attempting the liftoff of today's mission tomorrow. Yet now SpaceX didn't mention anything. While just hanging around for the update to come so that I can inform you guys. Although 24 minutes ago they gave an update that all systems were looking good and propellant load has started for today's launch of 21 Starlink satellites. And also they mentioned that they were keeping an eye on the weather in the recovery area, so I guess maybe for the probability of violation in the recovery of the first stage, might cause this change in schedule. It has not yet been updated in the SpaceX website. Anyways, we will be updating you guys as soon as we will get any update. Please keep an eye on our X handle to keep an track or of all the upcoming launches and latest happening in space. Even if SpaceX will be trying tomorrow, as it is evident from their scheduled webcast, now it is mentioning that it is of September 5th. I guess they will be trying to lift off at same time as of today, that is 9:07 a.m. Pacific time, 12:07 p.m. Eastern time, which corresponds to 4:07 UTC. But these times were this time which I mentioned, these are just based on the webcast of SpaceX. But according to their website, it mentions that they will be trying tomorrow with launch window opening at 8:35 a.m. Eastern time. Although yet now they have not updated their website for the today's launch, stating that it will be targeting tomorrow. So anyways guys, unfortunately we are not having any launch today. Still there is no update from SpaceX end to clarify about today's launch. I'm constantly refreshing those website pages and also their X handle. Don't know why they didn't provided any update yet, but they changed the webcast time to tomorrow. The website is still mentioning about today's schedule of Starlink launch, that is on September 4th, but the webcast is scheduled for September 5th. Although the liftoff time, the webcast of SpaceX is mentioning that of tomorrow's time, that is of the same time when it was to happen today. So I guess maybe if this time is right, then they will be targeting a liftoff time tomorrow at 9:07 a.m. Pacific time, 12:07 p.m. Eastern time, corresponding to 4:07 UTC. But SpaceX website mentions that if they will be launching tomorrow, the launch window will be opening at 8:35 a.m. Eastern Time. So there are some inconsistencies in all these statements. So anyways guys, let it be. We will update you. So with that, we will wrap up our coverage for now. Be sure to check out our social media handle on X for latest happening in space industry and updates on upcoming launches. Unfortunately, we didn't have the launch today, but we do appreciate everyone joining us for today's launch. Wishing everyone a great week ahead. Thanks for watching. This is AstroYonder Live and me, Dipta, signing off for now, and we will see you next time.